This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by OWC, Spectra 1964, Atom Audio, Samply, Isotope, and API. You're hearing my voice right now on the API 3122V mic pre and Spectra 1964 C610 comp limiter through Isotope, RX, Ozone, and Neutron, all recorded safely onto an OWC SSD and mixed on Atom Audio monitors. So get ready to rock.
There's a big community of people doing trailer music, which is a whole completely way of thinking of music because you're thinking visually and also you're writing the track and then it's being placed onto the timeline. They audition a lot of tracks and then they edit for it. So you have to kind of imagine what the trailer is going to look like for an imaginary movie.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. The Spectra 1964 C610 comp limiter brings fast, clean, quiet compression and limiting to your recordings and mixes. The C610 includes the famous Spectra 101 amplifier used in legendary studios like Stax, Ardent, and Record Plant. I love my C610s for drums, vocals, guitars, and especially bass, which helps me get the perfect low end in my mixes. And you can make your mixes rock at Spectra1964.com. When your band hits the studio, it's smart to have all the songs, mixes, and notes in one place. But figuring out how to share all the files can be frustrating. There's always somebody in the band who can't seem to log in or wants to use a different platform. Samply.app makes it easy to collaborate and communicate by creating a shared project so the whole band can get organized before the session. Just upload a voice memo, lyric sheet, song charts, photo, video, mixes, masters, or even invoices and start commenting. Sign up for your free account now with 25 gigs of storage and unlimited projects and use the coupon code RSR20 to get 20% off the first 3 months when you're ready to upgrade at samply.app. Howdy, Rockstars. It's your host, Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Brian Rivlin, a composer, producer, and part-time YouTuber living in Toronto, in Canada. He started his early career recording local artists, but very fast realized his true passion for film scores and soundtracks. Through his work, he found a deep fetish, I love it, love that word there, for streamlining his studio workflow. I think we can understand fetishes about studio things, which resulted in him starting a YouTube channel where Brian shares his love for music and the studio and gives a lot of cool tips on various things. His recent musical works include Apex Legends, Adventures of Ayuma, Ninajgo, My Little Pony, and various movie trailers, plus lots of other work which he's got on his website, so you should check that out. I actually stumbled on Brian's YouTube videos when I was doing a deep dive into learning more about an app for my Mac called Keyboard Maestro, because I was trying to find ways to streamline my own workflow in the studio. I've had experience in the past learning how to write some macros to do some of the tasks that are very repetitive in Pro Tools or other apps, and I was trying to revisit that. So I stumbled on Brian's YouTube videos, and Brian has some of the greatest how-to videos on his YouTube channel that really helped me out. So I figured I'd just reach out to him and invite him onto the show to learn more about his musical work, which turns out is fantastic, and get some great tips for you rock stars. Please welcome Brian Rivlin to Recording Studio Rockstars. Brian, are you ready to rock?
Yes, indeed.
Welcome to the show, man. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
I kind of did a brief introduction. I feel like you've done much more than what I just said in that intro. Give us a brief introduction in your own words as to who you are and how'd you get from being interested in music. Because I think you've been working for composing and stuff for 15 years at this point, right?
Yes, yes. So I'm originally from Israel, not originally from Canada.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I immigrated to Canada a little over 3 years ago. So most of my career has been there, and there's a great industry there for movies and TV and singer songwriters, and so yeah, I've been always kind of drawn to film score ever since I heard it was Crimson Tide by Hans Zimmer. I heard it somewhere and I'm like, this is great. What is this? And then kind of a rush of love for film score came upon me, and I was fascinated by it.
Yeah.
And I was just lucky enough to get some opportunities that got me doing TV shows and even some film score throughout the years. Yeah.
So did you actually start out doing film scoring for Israeli production companies?
Yeah. Even to this day, I'm only now, after 3 years, are kind of starting to make more connections in the U.S. industry and Canadian industry, but still to this day, most of my work is tied to Israel productions.
Right on. I actually had an Israeli roommate here once a decade ago or more when I went through a chapter in my life where I would have some roommates, and this guy, Eric Berman, who I think was fairly popular songwriter, touring musician in Israel. He came and he stayed with me for a couple of months while he was making his record here in Nashville. And it was just it was cool to see him work, and, his laptop went the other direction when he was writing and stuff like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't know him personally, but he is very famous in Israel. So yeah, that's awesome that you got to be roommates. It's amazing.
Yeah, it was a real trip. He showed me how to make his favorite Niçoise salad. So I was eating that for my lunch breaks in the studio for at least a year.
Foods bring people together always.
They do indeed. Well, so very cool. And now you are in, where did we say? We said Toronto, right? So tell us a little bit about Toronto too. That's kind of a hub for filmmaking as well in Canada, right?
Yes. Like I mentioned, only now starting to kind of make a few connections and getting familiar with people that are doing some films and directing stuff.
So the move's recent for you.
Yeah, it pretty much is. But I from what I'm seeing, which is very early for me, I love it. I know that we have TIFF here in Toronto, which is the Toronto International Film Festival, which is kind of like one of the most renowned film festivals in kind of like film industry worldwide. So yeah, the potential is great. I've watched films that came out of TIFF and they're fantastic. So I'm super excited just to kind of dip my foot a little bit into the industry. I did get to work with a bunch of singer-songwriters and producing some songs from them. I'm actually going to do another writing camp. I did one writing camp in Montreal. It was March 2019, I think. And then I have one coming up right at the end of this month as we're recording this. And great talents, great people. It's a lot of fun.
So writing camp is in you're teaching a writing camp, or is in you're attending one?
Attending. Yeah. So I actually started my musical journey learning the piano when I was 5 years old, and then kind of a neighbor when I was still living with my parents. I was 13, and then a neighbor gave me a copy of Cubase. And then wow. I was like, this is great. I get to it's not only playing the piano, I get to record it and then layer things on top of each other and create full compositions. And so, So I kind of like doing a lot of everything. So song production and then also film score. I was doing a lot of touring live with bands as well. I get bored when I do one thing too much.
Right.
And eventually that also led me to doing YouTube, which is to, just do as much as I can creatively.
YouTube stuff is fun to do. I mean, I think there are certainly people who build careers out of starting a YouTube channel, and then there are people who make some videos, and it's a lot of fun to do, but maybe don't necessarily do that. I feel like I'm caught somewhere in the middle. I use it as a great way for getting my podcast out for an additional platform. One of the things I love about posting the podcast on YouTube is that there's a built-in ability for people to have a dialogue. There's the comments and stuff like that. So Rockstars, you can just leave your comments in and we can respond to it, which I love that. But, for me, the podcast is the primary source, is where it streams on podcast streaming. So I was thinking about your interest in Cubase too. There's a couple of people that come to mind for me. Locally, there's a really wonderful composer named John Painter, who has yet to be a guest on the show, but he's a great pop musician, and he does a lot of work with people all over. And I know he's a huge fan of Cubase. And then I have a friend, Chris Salim, with Mixdown Online. He's up there in Montreal and up near you, or pretty close anyway. And he is strictly doing Cubase production. So I'll probably connect you guys one way or another for sure.
I'll appreciate it. Yeah, that'll be awesome. It's I didn't choose Cubase. This is just the first thing that kind of was brought upon me from that neighbor. I do use a little bit of everything. Logic.
So you use Pro Tools as well?
So Pro Tools is kind of my one weakness. But because I don't do a lot of engineering, and when I record stuff, it's mostly kind of like in a creative, not that you can't do that with Pro Tools, but it's because I'm used to creating with Cubase, then I'm just recording straight into it. And so I didn't get a lot into Pro Tools. It's mostly Cubase first, Ableton second, because it's just like a creative monster that you can do amazing stuff with, and then Logic, because a lot of artists use Logic, so it's good just to have that in your toolbox.
Yeah, well, I've been very impressed with what I've seen about Cubase. It seems to have a ton of features built right into it for composition, manipulating tracks and sounds, whether you're trying to tighten up and shuffle drum edits around and get things quantized, whether you're trying to tune vocals, all that stuff's kind of built right into it. Yes, definitely. We have some advocates for Cubase, which I love. Some big names in the industry like Hans Zimmer, Ian Kirkpatrick, which is huge. He actually makes live streams of him kind of building beats and breaking down some of his productions, which are just unbelievable. But he is kind of exclusively using Cubase, so it's good to see that there's a big community of people that are using it and loving it. And kind of the thing that I really like about it is its customizability. And so you can interact with a lot of third-party devices and apps like Keyboard Maestro, like a lot of external controllers, and get it kind of custom to your workflow. So that's kind of like another level of deep love that I have for it, that I found throughout the years. Yeah. I guess a little bit like Reaper and Presonus Studio One have some of those macro features built into it too.
Yes. Also, not a lot of experience with those, but it seems like kind of the macro game is gaining popularity. And I
guess it is. Yeah. So give us an introduction to what is a macro?
So it's a big question. A macro is, in my words, it's a way of doing one action, like pushing a button, and then that would do multiple actions for that one action. And then you can kind of, the sky's kind of the limit with that. You can have it contextual. So if you're clicking this button while this is happening, then something else might happen. And so that's kind of like, in a nutshell, the simplest I can try to explain it.
Yeah. So like, ironically, when I think about it, actually just doing anything within a DAW is really a macro, because it's making code happen behind the scenes.
True.
To make stuff
However,
move around on your screen, right?
For most things, if you're just hitting a button and it does one action, that's a shortcut, which are fantastic. And most of my macros are just doing simple shortcuts. But I would define a macro as doing multiple actions with one keystroke or one action. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's kind of like what sets it apart.
Yeah. So, for example, Rockstars, if I was about to do background vocals and I wanted to have a track to record on and then pairs of tracks underneath that each time I recorded a vocal part, I could just pull that clip down to a track and it'd be panned and it'd be over to the left and turned down in volume or something like that. A macro would let me set up something like that so that it makes a bunch. I guess a track preset in Pro Tools would do something similar, but it's fun. So I'll actually, if you don't mind, I'll explain a macro that I'm using right now.
For sure, yeah.
That I made because I was excited watching your videos and hunting around and finally figured out how to do it in Keyboard Maestro.
This is making me so happy.
Yeah. So I knew that when I was doing these podcasts, one of the keys for me in production is if I did a podcast interview and it's 2 hours long, and then I said, oh, I've got to go carefully through 2 hours of audio and manually edit everything, then that quickly turns into a 4-hour task, something like that. I mean, it takes a long time depending on what you're doing and how edity you get. And believe you me, when we start out in podcasting, we can get very, very edity.
Yes.
Boy, you try and take out every and ah that you say until you start learning how to just not say them anymore.
I resonate with this. Oh my God.
I know. And and then you go through the thing where you're like, oh man, I've taken out so many ums and ahs. I should make a little remix of all the ums and ahs. and then you go, oh shit, where would I even find all those? I don't even know where they are. They're gone. God. So I thought, so I had a technique where I was like, all right, I need to learn how to drop markers in real time while I'm doing an interview. So if you're in a Pro Tools or a DAW, then that's fairly easy to figure out. You can just be rolling and then you just hit the button that will make a marker, and you make a marker during the interview, and there you have it. But I use third-party software with Skype right now with something called Call Recorder, and it's just got a little button that looks like a pencil, and there was no way for me to figure out how to do a quick key for something like that. So for a long time, I was pondering over this. I was like, how can I automate that little edit thing to click? There's got to be a way. And so then one day I got let me put it this way. So there are some things that are quick key about a Skype call or a Zoom call or whatever else you're using. And one of those is turning your mic on and off. So I thought, I'm going to get this little box called a Stream Deck, and in fact, I got something called a Stream Deck Mini, which is a real small one. And then that sort of, as I recall, with kind of a built-in feature set, was able to make a little image of a switch so when the mic's on, it looks one way, and when it's off, it looks a different way. And if I press it, then it does whatever the quick key command is, which I think would be like a Apple command, I'm revealing my old school Mac userness, Shift Command M or A for audio or whatever it is on that app. So I did that first, but then I was still trying to figure out the pencil thing. And I realized that with Keyboard Maestro, you can actually control the mouse on the screen, and you can do things like have it recognize an image, and if it sees something on the screen, just like you would see it. And so I was able to program this button. I know I'm taking a long time to explain this. Sorry, Brian. Rockstars, the Rockstars already forgive me for talking so much on the podcast. No, I'm asking your forgiveness.
No, this is good. Finish what you were saying, because this is great.
Atom Audio introduces the all-new A7V monitor with rotatable HPS waveguide for the accelerated ribbon tweeter and advanced onboard DSP-based room correction using the included A-Control software or optional SonarWorks software and measurement mic, allowing you to tune your speakers for your room, your mix position, and your ears anytime you want. Get the extended 5-year warranty for monitors that will improve as your studio improves at atomaudio.com. If you're ready to upgrade your studio to the famous sound of API's large format consoles, then you're ready for the Box, a small format console featuring the same analog circuitry and original 2520 op-amp design that made API famous for more than 50 years. Record through 8 world-class mic pre-channels, mix through 24 smooth as glass faders, and upgrade your home studio to legendary status. API now offers a virtual console experience, allowing you to get a personalized online demo of the Box at apiaudio.com. So I made a button that just says marker in, and then if I press that one, it looks for the image of the little pencil, and without me even seeing it, it just goes to that with the mouse, and then I was able to, you can tell Keyboard Maestro, hey, have the mouse scoot a little over to the right or scoot up or down, depending on how spot on it lands, and then click. And then I even have, and then up pops a dialog box, and then I have it put in some text and just say, in for, and that's my code for when, I'm revealing too much here, Brian, but when you say something really brilliant, I'm like, I hit the in button, and then I can go back and find that for the little teaser intro at the beginning of the podcast.
Right.
And then the next one says marker cough, and you can guess what that one's for.
That's so good.
Yeah. So thank you for your inspiration, man. It's been working.
No, this is my pleasure, and I'm so excited hearing people talk about it and being excited as I am. So, what you described is so right, because I find that talking about macros, people talk about the technical, like I have the Stream Deck and I have Keyboard Maestro, but I find that it's primarily first in your head. So my whole fascination with this started when I got my Avid used to have these artist mix and artist control.
Right.
Kind of controllers that has motorized faders, and I was just looking for something to do more automation because I had nothing, and so I found this artist control which had this built-in little LCD screen, which was not. It wasn't a capacitive touch screen, but a resistive touch screen. So you had to apply force, and it wasn't, as precise as what we have right now with the iPhones. But Avid, when they, well, it's not actually Avid, it's Yukon, when they released their controller system, they also had the Yukon software, and they had these basically macros that can do multiple actions. And you can still do that actually for free if you have an iPad and you're using I think it's the Pro Tools Control app. U-Control,
Control, right?
Yeah, and so there's this section for basically doing that in a very basic level. Keyboard Maestro is kind of like one step. Like the next step of what this is, but this is kind of how it started. I'm like, I can configure buttons and do things in multiple actions really, really quick. And when I switched to
hold on, be careful with the really, really quick. You get quicker.
Yes, but this is kind of what sparked it. And then kind of like what you described, where you had this first, I can trigger the mute button, but then with Keyboard Maestro, maybe I can do more. This is kind of what sparked, what can I also do with this? And it's the thought first that kind of ignited like, okay, what's the next step and what can I do more and how can I do this more? And so it kind of turned into this notion of, I don't want to interact with my software. I just want to create. So I want to do as little. So for me, hitting OK on a dialogue is time wasted. And I know it's a microsecond, but kind of like in my philosophy, if I know that I'm going to hit this OK or whatever that I'm always doing, if I can have the computer do it for me, this is perfect. And so then you kind of like, you get into this mentality, and it's great seeing. And I was just kind of like overflown with emotions of like, I found a really great thing that makes me quicker when I produce and when I compose, and I just wanted to share it with people. I needed the people to know about this thing. I couldn't contain it, and so I just did this one YouTube, and I was getting response, and I'm like, oh, maybe this kind of has more value just than for like my own excitement.
Yeah, well, it's fun to share what we love on the internet through podcasts and YouTube videos and stuff like that. And it's really fun when you discover that it's connecting with people. And I know for me, the first place I go to when I think about how am I going to do something, I go over to YouTube and I just go like, search how to do this, how to do that. And I'll sit and watch videos to kind of absorb a bit. And there's that difference between when I'm actively trying to do something. At that point, it's like, okay, it's time to bust out the app and start figuring it, trial and error. But at that point at which I'm trying to get a sense of, this like learning sense of like, what's possible? What could I do? Or, is there something out there? It's so fun to like click over and discover a video like yours where you're showing this stuff off. And it's like, damn, that's badass. That looks really cool.
Yeah. And then you start kind of making it work for your own setup. And this is kind of what fills me with joy the most, is when people that are not necessarily musicians use it for their own application. So even you, when you're saying you're using it for your podcast, this is great. This is kind of like, it gives you even like value beyond kind of music making. And there was one guy that said with so there's one YouTube video on my channel where I kind of show how to build a custom touchscreen controller on your iPad. And there was one guy that uses it to kind of create shortcuts when he's working in Unreal Engine, which is a 3D gaming engine, which is completely, unrelated to music. And I'm like, this is so great. This is so great that I get to bring some value to a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, so what's funny watching your channel is you're clearly a very, very sharp individual who likes to do things. So you get stuff to happen and get it done and move on. And if you come back tomorrow and you're ready to do it all over again and improve with your system, you'll just, scrap that version and we're going to rebuild it this way. But, I watched a video where you're teaching how to do the touchscreen stuff with using the tool Lemur, which is a cool one. And I remember discovering that years ago and being fascinated by it, but I never really, was able to adopt it. And then, then you came back later and like, okay, here's this other one called
Open Stage
Control, which actually I thought I was like, oh, is that Touch OSC? But now that I'm looking at it, I don't know if that is the same thing. That's a different thing, right?
It's different. Apparently, there are two kind of messages that you can send. One is MIDI and one is OSC. And I think Touch OSC was primarily that. And Touch OSC was kind of like, I don't want to say competitor, but another version like Lemur.
Right.
And Open Stage Control, even though it shares the same kind of, OSC title, it's a little different. You can do both MIDI and OSC with it, but I liked the customizability of it, and Unfortunately, I would have stuck with Lemur for longer, but it seems that support is starting to drop out. So I was just looking for the next thing that is future proof.
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny? Just a little anecdote. The time that all this stuff popped up on my radar, and I was like, "Whoa, holy shit, this looks really cool," and this would be a lot of fun to start, programming controllers and having things controlling stuff in the studio. Was years ago when Daft Punk was performing for the Grammys, and they're up there in their spacesuits, and they've got these like touchscreen controller surfaces in front of them that are just like colorful shapes and lines and circles and everything. You're like, what in the world is that? And I think that I remember hearing they're like, oh, they're programming all their own controllers with Lemur and stuff. And whether my little anecdote is really accurate or just a little bit of urban legend.
It sounds accurate. I think this is pretty spot on. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just fun to discover that and see what's possible. So finding your stuff and looking into the Keyboard Maestro and starting to do that also led me to learning about sound flow later on, which was fascinating and got me really interested too. And in fact, I've already had a couple of guests on talking about using that tool. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that one yet. But it's I guess it's primarily pointed towards Pro Tools right now. So that might be why it would or would not be on your radar.
So it's funny you would bring that up. They actually emailed me after watching one of my videos and said, "Why won't you try this?"
Yeah, there you go.
And yet it's a little bit more targeted at Pro Tools, even though one of their I don't know if he is one of the programmers or just one of the early adopters of it. It's a composer that I can't remember his name, but he is doing just crazy stuff because he's actually scripting crazy things in Cubase. He's using Cubase primarily. I tried SoundFlow. I wasn't able to get it to work. And am not completely sure why. And so maybe it's my fault, but also just the fact that it's subscription based was kind of less than motivating for me.
Right. Well, that's the beauty of what we do too, and the wonderful thing about diving into this whole world of studios, discovering that there's kind of options on all levels. Like there are tools that we can use that you buy one time, and it might be like, this is just what I needed. There are subscription things that you sign up for and you're like, this is just what I needed because it solves my problem, and it's it's there all the time and it's going to be updatable. And then there are these tools that are also very inexpensive or sometimes free, which maybe require a little bit of learning or something, but I just love it. It's fascinating. And I find myself using them all.
Exactly. And I'm glad that you brought it up, because everyone's workflow and creative creative process is different. And so some people would be interested in some things than others. I like to spend an entire day making the perfect macro that will work every time. Some people just need a simple layout that will just have buttons that you can clearly see, and they'll do one action, and they don't need fancy stuff. And it's funny that you should mention it. I just finished writing the script for another kind of software app, kind of like Lemur situation. It's called Touch Portals, or Touch Portal, and it's more basic than what you can do with Open Stage Control or Stream Deck, but in some other cases it's more advanced. But it's kind of like a very simple way to get just a very good looking, simple touchscreen control. And it's completely free. You just need an iPad or an Android tablet or an old phone. You can do it. And this is also, I do realize that I can be a little geeky about those things.
That's all right, man. That's why we enjoy. That's why we get to come to your YouTube channel and watch you get excited about it. What's the name of that one again?
Touch Portal.
Touch Portal. All right. So I do have a little side question. This is for you and for all the rock stars too. If somebody came along and came up with the next app and it was just called Touch Me, would it go flying off the shelves, or would everybody just not go anywhere near it?
Oh my God. I mean, it depends on how useful it is.
That's a good point. There you go. All right. All right. So, sorry, back on track here.
Yeah.
So these are all very cool things. And I think it's important for us to remember to, I don't want to stay focused on the, waxing philosophical about it all, but, some of these tools are going to require that inner inventor in us. For me, it conjures up the 8th grader that was learning basic code programming and, was trying to make the first, his first horse race game where the pi symbols go randomly across the screen and see who wins. So, that may not be you, Rockstars, in which case you might be more drawn towards something where it's like, oh, if I just install it, it's ready to go and I can start trying it out. And so that's fine. Just know that there's the different options are out there. But one of the nice things about stuff that's flexible is you can kind of make it whatever shape you want, right?
Yes. And also, there's like an entry level. For most things, it's accessible, so you can have the basic thing happen with no learning curve. It's pretty intuitive. And then if you want to go deeper and deeper, you can. And that's true for Keyboard Maestro, for open stage control, and for any kind of controller out there. I don't know anything about coding. And just because the internet is such a wonderful thing and you can get information so quickly, and if you can't get the right information that you're looking for, you just pop onto the right forum and you ask the question and you'll get the answers. So it's also a great tool to just learn. At the end of the day, it's like a double win because you get also a better thing that is tailored to your workflow, and then also you become smarter. So win-win.
Yeah, indeed. Well, so let's ask this question. Are you typically on a Mac or are you on a PC?
I'm on a Mac. I started with Windows, and then a friend told me that Mac is better. And I can't remember.
I like your friend. Sorry, I'm going to get hate mail now.
I think it started when I was frustrated with Cubase for whatever reason. And I'm like, okay, I need to try Logic. I need to shake things up. And so this is a gray area. I tried a Hackintosh and tried Logic on it. And then I hated Logic. So I came back to Cubase, but I stuck on the Mac, and then it just got like a legit Mac, and yeah, it's great. But it's been a while. It's been like 20 years that I'm Mac primarily.
Nice. Well, I know at least 2 people that were in the Hackintosh world, and I think one of them went over to a PC and the other one went over to a Mac. So there you go.
That's fascinating. Yeah. PC has a lot of advantages too.
Ever wonder how I get a consistent sound quality mixing hundreds of episodes of Recording Studio Rockstars? It's because I've been cheating by using iZotope, RX, Ozone, and Neutron on every single episode. Right now, you are hearing RX breath control, declick, declip, DS, deplosive, voice denoise, Ozone multiband compression, Neutron EQ, and limiting, all from iZotope. Try out the subscription option for yourself with an extended 30-day free trial at iZotope.com/rockstars, or use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off any individual plugin purchase. In my studio, I chose the OWC Mini-Stack STX Thunderbolt 4 certified storage and expansion hub because it seamlessly connects to my Mac Mini M1 for my dedicated audio drives, sample libraries, and backup drives. It's the perfect size to stack with the Mac Mini and add storage and connectivity over Thunderbolt or USB. Whether you have the new or older Mac Mini, nothing stacks up in your studio quite like OWC. Find the new Mini-Stack STX and all your storage needs at macsales.com/rockstars. It's in a way, it's got that programmability to it, But ultimately, I think Mac really does too. Just sometimes you have to you have to open the hood a little higher to get under it, you know?
True. Yes. Yes,
And then
definitely.
a comment I wanted to make relative to that is just what's cool watching your video. For example, the one about open stage control, where you talk about making a touchscreen.
Right.
That one introduces this concept of like, we're not even talking about Mac and PC anymore. Now we're talking about some code, and we're talking about URL and a browser that's on any kind of tablet. And that browser is sort of interacting, using browsery language.
Yes. This is also what got me excited, because app can lose support. And while, yes, there is an app that is acting as the host, much like in Lemur and TouchOSC, it's still, I mean, the community is very much alive, but whatever next OS is going to come with future devices and future company rising and falling, you always have the browser to surf the web. And then it's kind of like, this is why I thought it was future proof, because as long as you can run your host, which is supported in, I mentioned this in the video, in Mac, Windows, and Linux, if you're very geeky, which is fantastic, you can run your touchscreen on any device.
So when you say your host, you mean like the touchscreen itself hosting, or are we talking about the main computer and we're running our DAW on a Linux computer?
So when I'm talking about the host, it's basically what is sending the data to whatever you need it to send. So with every now we're talking about, well, actually, even where you're talking about something like the Avid Artist Mix or the Avid S1, which I know that you have because I listened to one of your podcasts, and I have the same one.
Oh, good. We get to talk about S1. Sweet.
Yeah. Or something like the Monogram CC, which is also like a great modular system of controllers. You always have this app that is the brains of it. And so much like in Open Stage Control, you have an app that is kind of the host that sits on your computer. In my case, actually, it's on a separate computer, a Mac Mini. I think it's like 2014 one, so really old. And the Mac Mini is just there to host the main app, and that app sends MIDI to my main Mac Pro.
Oh, that's cool. Fun stuff. All right. Well, so let's see. Let's start talking about, before we lose the Rockstars, or, which isn't too bad. Maybe they're getting a deep sleep right now. It's hard to say, but
maybe I think though, if they search a little bit about the subject, they'll come back to this.
Yeah, they will. Yeah, they will. But let's get them excited by talking about some of your favorite, automations or macros that you have programmed for your own workflow. So I know, for example, one of your inspirations, or probably a very huge inspiration, is Hans Zimmer. And you talk in your videos, you refer to appreciating, in my understanding, you refer to him to appreciating the way that he has built in automated systems to make the composing and staying in the creative flow super easy and super fluid. And then you've recreated some of your own interpretations of those on different touchscreen controllers and stuff. But just tease us with some really cool little features where you like reach over and click a button, and it just gets you rolling.
Some of my current favorites. This is a great question. So one of my current favorites is when I record acoustic guitar, I always do it double tracked. So I'll record it twice, one on the left side, one on the right side. And whenever I need to create kind of this setup where I have two mono channels panned left and right, and then some to one group or a bus, then I have this one button that creates the two channels, pans them left and right, and then names them, and then groups them to the correct group, names the group, and then also colors them. And that happens in under 10 seconds, and it's ready to go. And it also, I made sure that when it's finished with doing all of those actions, it lands on the first track that I need to record. So I don't need to click any button. I'm just ready to record. I have kind of a similar thing with recording backing vocals, but it prompts me with a little dialog box of how many backing vocals you're going to record. So say I want to do like a 10-part harmony.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. So I just enter 10, and then it knows to create 10 backing vocals and then pans them left and right and does and do everything the same. But as far as composing stuff, and this is kind of like not even doing anything with my DAW, with Cubase or Ableton or whatever, is naming stuff very quickly, but in a very organized way. So this is something that I'm going to share in a next video. I have a little, well, I did one video, but I want to make it a series of my current 5 favorite macros. And one of them that I use right now is, so I use the Kemper to recording for recording all of my electric guitars.
Oh, cool. Is that partly, I mean, I know it's a very flexible thing, but is that also partly because you found yourself living in kind of urban apartment settings where having a guitar and a pair of headphones or just, quieter through the speakers is a really great idea?
Yes. And also because I work primarily in the box. Mm-hmm. And so in a fast pace industry, you need recallability and you need to move fast and you want to have a lot of options. Not in every scenario, but personally for my kind of scenarios. And so also back when I bought the Kemper, amp simulation plugins were very CPU intensive. And so I kept on recording and editing my guitar takes. And then like I had, 10 guitar tracks and my CPU was kind of floored.
Yeah, plus latency gets to be a real headache.
Exactly. And so I figured if the Kemper sounds good, then it's also a great way for me to get accountability and be a better guitar player, because I record most of my guitars. So I can't edit it after because I'm just recording the output of the Kemper. So I have to nail it.
Right.
And so also versatility. I can choose a lot of amps and I can recall them and get the same sound. And so before they came up with the editor, but even after they came up with the editor, it wasn't like if you have a guitar amp simulation plugin, everything is stored in the session and you can come back to it. But when you're recording with something like a Kemper, I needed to make a note of which guitar I was playing, what pickup, and which amp simulation, if I changed anything. So I have one button that prompts these series of dialogues, and I have 5 electric guitars. So I scroll like for the right guitar that I'm playing with. So like my Jazz Master, and then it asks me which pickup. If it's a Strat, it gives me the 5 options where it's neck, bridge, all of the combinations. So it prompts me with the right dialogue for the right pickup positions available for that guitar. And then it asks me which amp modeling I was using, and it goes and copies it from the Kemper editor. And then another prompt to maybe insert any kind of changes. Maybe I changed the reverb mix from 30 to 25, and I don't want to save it as a new preset just because I tweaked it a little bit, so I can have it dialed exactly without saving a new preset. And then once I'm done with everything, I have in my clipboard this kind of perfectly organized text that I can paste into my track notes, and it just hit paste, and it says guitar, this guitar, pickup, this pickup, if I changed anything, and the amp model. And I can do this manually and write it, but this is so much quicker because I'm just using arrows up and down and enter.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, a lot of times I try and resort to just an iPhone photo, and that can be great in a pinch, but it can also be very tricky. And sometimes the lighting isn't right, or it's fuzzy, or it's just hard to get the photo where you want it in the session or something, So
exactly. Similar thing that I'm doing, I'm kind of interacting with a lot of clients, and each client has their own way of file naming stuff. If they like to use spaces or kind of this underscore. And so I made in Keyboard Maestro this dialogue where I just input all of the information of which show it is, which episode, what's the queue number and queue name, which version and the time code, and I hit enter, and it's always in the right format, so I don't have to think about it and refer to like, oh, this is how we like it. And it's more than saving me time, it also frees my brain, so I don't need to think about it. I just input the information that I'm dealing with right now, and then computer takes care of the rest.
Now, am I remembering correctly that you even have a step further? You probably got lots of step furthers, but I thought I remember you talking about, it's late in the day, you got to deliver this stuff, your deliverables about what you just composed, and you're a little tired, but you got to send emails and they've got to be sent properly. I could be remembering somebody else's video on this one, so stop me if I am.
Okay.
Or don't. But the macro that was created was one where you could hit a button and it'll go pull the files, bring them in, paste them into the email with the form text for the delivery, and it will actually embed the link directly in the title of the track as opposed to a long URL link, and it looks all nice and neat and it's not screwed up. And then you just kind of review it and hit send. Was that you, or was I remembering a different one? Okay, great.
Yeah, this is something because and again, these things are not necessarily relevant to any kind of line of work, but it was relevant to me because I was sending a lot of revisions. And so every time kind of copying the Dropbox link and then copying it into the dialogue in Gmail and then changing the name so it won't be the long link. This was taking a lot of time. So kind of like when you find something that you're doing repetitively, you start to think, well, can I just automate it? And that kind of prompt up that idea. Yes.
And I know for me, the challenge sometimes is, can I automate it right this second? No. So come back later tonight and automate it.
Yeah. And then there are the basic stuff. Like I really like Omnisphere. It's such a versatile plugin. So I have a button on my Stream Deck and I hit it, and then it just opens the dialog box for adding an instrument track into Cubase, and then it selects Omnisphere for me, and then chooses the synth bus already, and hit enter, and colors it with this like the track color that I like for my synths. And if you ever see an Ender Sheps video, you know that color your session first and then start mixing it.
Indeed.
So yeah, everything that kind of like can make you. It's stuff that you need to do, but not think about it. It frees your brain to just focus on the creative things.
So you just finished an awesome mix and sent it off to the band, but the singer texts you with lyric changes, the drummer emails you wanting a different fill, and the bass player DMs you about a wrong note in the chorus. But which mix version were they talking about anyway? Don't you wish there was an easier way? Samply.app comes to the rescue as your ultimate mix assistant, streaming full resolution audio so your clients can easily listen and send notes from their mobile phone on the road or the computer back at the studio. All mix comments are time-stamped directly onto the correct mix version with no confusion, and you also get A/B listening capability with synchronized playback and level matching for easy mix comparison, all inside Samply. It's file sharing that was built specifically for music, and it all works inside your browser with no downloads required. Sign up now for your free account with 25 gigs of storage and unlimited projects, and use the coupon code RSR20 to get 20% off the first 3 months when you're ready to upgrade at samply.app. 50 years ago, William G. Dilley introduced the world to his revolutionary new dynamics processor, the Model 610 Complementer. A truly unique device, the Model 610 was not only the fastest, cleanest, and quietest of its type, but was also capable of providing completely separate peak limiting and compression functions. Today, Spectra 1964 introduces the Model C610 Complementer, described as the most versatile piece of audio gear you can buy. Great for adding control and power to everything from vocals, guitars, and bass to mixing and even mastering, the C610 gives you the same massive sound that rocked legendary studios like Stax, Ardent, Advision, A&M, and Record Plant. It even has enough gain to function as a mic preamp. I'm using the C610 on every record I make at the Toy Box Studio, and you should too. You'll love it. Go to Spectra1964.com or call 801-797-0642. Howdy, rock stars. We are back now for the jam session, aka the second half of the show. Secret reveal, it's actually just a bathroom break for all of us who are doing these interviews. My guest today is Brian Rivlin, joining us from Toronto.
Hello, hello.
Brian, are you ready to jam, dude?
Let's do it.
All right, so we could talk macros all day long, and we'll circle back, and every time it comes up again, we can dig into something cool. But let's talk about the music you make.
For sure.
Tell us a little bit about what gosh, I mean, you've got so many cool tracks in your playlist here.
Thank you.
You know, Ninajgo, which as soon as I clicked on, I was like, Ninja Legos. All right, I get it. You know,
yeah.
That looks like that might have been a lot of fun for you. Some of those tracks, like what would be a typical beginning to recording something? What's the process? You're staring at some kind of image, you're putting up certain instruments, you just immediately know what the right answer is?
So specifically, the Ninajgo stuff is very much interesting. So Ninajgo is actually being composed by two brilliant composers. One of them is Jay Vincent. And basically, my kind of job description in the process is Jay would write down a very detailed composition of a cue that he needs to write. He would basically have all of the parts there, not necessarily produced. Sometimes it'll be just in, the generic piano sounds in Logic. Sometimes it'll be with some patches from Omnisphere and stuff like that. And then he would basically give me that session. It'll be my job to produce it, make it sound like the final version. And so it's always challenging. I've been doing, along with a good friend, Daniel Markovich, we've been doing this together, kind of assisting Jay for a few seasons now. And every season is a little different. And so every time it's coming up with the new sounds for whatever the world that they're in kind of right now, and also making it sound as best as possible. So
now sound design and Foley kind of stuff as well, or just the music?
No, just the actual music that the Jay is writing for that cue. So making the string sounds right, and all of the horns, if this thing needs synths and drums, and basically making it sound like a finished piece. And it's kind of our job to pick the right sounds for whatever he is writing. And it's a great challenge, not in the difficult sense, but just in the fun sense that it's always different. So if you heard some of the tracks, some of it just sounds like a classic philharmonic kind of Hollywood symphony kind of sound, with maybe because it's ninja stuff, so kind of some ethnic instruments. But then one of the seasons were inside of a computer game, so a lot of synths, a lot of retro
8-bit
kind of
sounds.
Exactly. Yes. There was one cue that the character was playing guitar and was kind of like an 80s rock star. So I needed to find the right kind of drums and the right sounds from them. So I remember using a lot of Addictive Drums have this great analog kits along with some, I think it was 80s kit from Superior Drummer, putting the right gated reverb on it and then putting chorus on a distorted guitar, which is like, how often do you get to do it?
Yeah.
And I love how extremely creative it is.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because it's like you get this freedom to explore all these different musical genres, but you don't have the additional pressure of having to write the entire thing from nothing.
Exactly. This comes with also the responsibility of I need to make sure that Jay, the composer, likes it, and then also that the client likes it. So the production, and then also Lego themselves, because it's their product. So it's
interesting.
Yeah. But kind of like I mentioned that I like doing a little bit of everything. So I also really enjoy, like, because you think, oh, you're just an assistant of, and people don't want to be like, they want to be the main composers. But also I like the fact that my position right now is just to figure out the sound of it and not compose it. It puts me in a different mind space.
Well, I imagine that it gives you this huge lexicon and vocabulary of sounds that you understand better and better and better and better, so that when you then come back to do a composition, you now are calling up from all these possibilities, and you know how you would get this sound, you know how you would get that sound.
Exactly. I think it's kind of like if there's a brilliant mixing engineer, if you put him or her, if you put them in a production position, they'll make wiser choices because they know how it's going to end up in the mixing stage and what mixing engineers like to get when they're approaching a session. And so there are benefits to filling out a lot of different roles as you're doing things.
Yeah. You're taking the tracks from Ninjago to Ninjago.
Exactly.
Okay, cool, man. Well, so then you've also got some stuff in there like action clips and things like that, and then a kids area and a soundtracks area. What are some of the things that for you are most fun about doing composition for film and TV? You know, what really draws you to it? What do you get super excited about?
So primarily what I got to work on in my career so far was mostly things for kids up to like youth, maybe around 18-year-old genre. And I find that just because you can be a little bit more over the top, even though now with Netflix doing or other streaming services, they're doing like HBO doing extremely amazing stuff with fantasy, but for adults. Now you kind of see this kind of like more genres of media going to even more audiences. But what I like about it is the versatility. It's kind of like how every time it's different. And so it always sparks a new sound palette or a new idea. And essentially you're telling the story behind the story with music.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes, and I think we're referencing Hans Zimmer a lot in this interview, but if I'll take his soundtrack for Interstellar, even though it's a movie taking place in space, it's about relationship and love and family. And so that's why the main instrument is the piano, because it's not about space. It's not, synths. And I think it was all acoustic. Obviously, he always likes to layer some sound design, but instead of using a synth, he used this church organ, which is so brilliant. And so this is what really gets me excited, is thinking, okay, but this is a show about even something like, say, Ninjago. It's not about toy Legos. It's about what's the story and what's behind it. What is the character doing? There in the first season that I was kind of brought into the team, there is a character called Okino, and later down in the season, he realizes that he is a computer character and that he is not real, and what it means. And then they're explaining that his contribution to like helping the ninja in the show is real, and he's more than that. And it's not just like about how you've being perceived. And so sometimes even the silliest TV show that is intended for kids can hit you in the heart so bad. And I think that is so beautiful. And then everything else comes secondary. Everything also falls into place once you actually realize what the story is about, not what the story is. Things will fall into place really, really quickly. And then all you have to do is let the music flow out of you. And if you set up your macros correctly, you can do it quicker.
I like it. I picture you're talking about Ninjago and the characters, and they're trying to do something or accomplish something, and then they figure out, then they're curious whether or not they can build a macro to make that thing happen faster. So you've got some of these other ones in here, like you've done stuff for Jungle Book, Artemis Fowl, some other films, even 60 Minutes, and then there's another one that looks like a really good sci-fi one, but I can't read the title.
So these mostly are trailer campaigns. I haven't worked on the film, but there's a big community of people doing trailer music, which is a whole completely way of thinking of music, because you're thinking visually, and also you're writing the track, and then it's being placed onto the timeline. They audition a lot of tracks, and then they edit for it. So you have to kind of imagine what the trailer is going to look like for an imaginary movie. So,
oh, interesting. So you do the music is first, and then like a music video, the film is cut to that. The trailer's cut to that, rather.
Exactly. They obviously can't use the music for legal reasons and contracts, and it'll cost a lot of money. They can't use the music that was used on the film for the trailer. But say Star Wars has the probably the most famous theme in the world. I can make a track using that theme, and they can place it in the next Star Wars trailer or whatever. And so it's a different way of thinking, and it's kind of like it's basically doing library music. So you're building kind of a library, and then you have all of these agencies and companies that are acting as a communicator between your tracks and the trailer houses that are basically being hired to do the trailer. And that's kind of Jungle Book and the other project that you mentioned are basically are trailer houses using my tracks for their campaigns. I hadn't had the pleasure of having a theatrical trailer using my music. This is a rare commodity, but they're doing so many promos for these movies, and so sometimes it's placed in just like a 10-second ad before you play a game on your phone and stuff like that. So
nice.
Yeah, and just the way of thinking about it, it's very visually, because they cut it in such an, even for a like a love story film, they still cut it in such a visual way that you need to think about your composition visually first, which is a challenge in it by itself. And for the really actiony stuff, I like the sound design of it. So when I'm working on producing songs or the more, what's the word I'm looking for?
Rocking out.
Yes, yes. So you gravitate to the pillars of music: the guitar, the bass, the drums, the keyboards. But when composing to trailer stuff, I find that coming up with a weird enough sound can make a great sell for your track. And so most of my odd synths, like the Lyra 8, which is a Russian-made synth that you play it by closing a circuit between two contact pads, and you can change the pitch. Like each one has its own pitch. It's not like a piano exactly. It makes the weirdest sound, but that's exactly what you want to do.
Yeah. Look, it might be hard to describe in a few words what gives records a legendary sound, but it would be pretty easy to describe in a few letters: API. For more than 50 years, API Audio has created large format consoles for world-class studios. Famous for co-founder Saul Walker's circuit designs and original 2520 op amp, the sound of API consoles is the sound of great music. API now brings that legendary sound to your home studio with The Box, a small format console featuring the famous API circuitry that is the perfect analog addition to your digital studio. The Box gives you 8 recording channels on the left with built-in mic pre's, high-pass filters, direct inputs, customizable 500 module slots, and 16 summing channels on the right. Or you can mix using all 24 channels, including aux, sends, inserts, and silky smooth faders. API now offers a virtual console experience with a personalized online demo of the Box, 16082, or 2448 console. Sign up for your demo now at apiaudio.com. Atom Audio introduces the new A7V monitor for home and pro studios, the next generation of the incredibly popular A7X. The all-new A-series line of monitors delivers the same highly accurate, transparent sound and unique accelerated ribbon tweeter design that has made Atom Audio famous for over a decade, but now includes new innovations, such as the rotatable high-frequency propagation system waveguide, allowing the XART tweeter to disperse sound with controlled consistency, and DSP-based room correction and speaker voicings. Using the A-Control software or SonarWorks and Measurement Mic, you can now integrate advanced filters directly to the DSP onboard the speaker to help compensate for imperfect room acoustics without introducing annoying latency or requiring plugins. This allows you to tune your monitors for your room, your mix position, and your ears anytime you want to meet your ever-evolving studio needs. Get the extended 5-year warranty for monitors that will improve as your studio improves at atomaudio.com. Well, then let's pivot over to one of the other cool videos you were talking about, and maybe we can talk about some fun new plugins for you too. There's one video where you talked about using something called Vital Synth, which looked like it'd be fun for the Rockstars to know about. And then this Devious Machines Infiltrator, which looked like a lot of fun. And you sort of recreated a guitar into a reverb for a piano track, and then of course busted out some of our faves like Valhalla reverbs.
Oh my God. Everybody uses Valhalla, as they should. It's kind of like, dare I say, the perfect reverb plugin. Not that it's the only one that you should get, but I use it 90% of the time. My other plugins, they're there because I know what I want them to do. But Valhalla is so easy on your CPU and it sounds so lush that, like, why wouldn't you use it? But yeah, some of my current favorite kind of plugins, the Devious Machine, I think is called Infiltrator. It has a macro kind of mentality to it in which it does a lot of complex stuff for you. And you can customize it if you want, but it comes with tons of presets. I remember that I emailed back and forth with the company, with Devious Machines, and they said that after 200 or 300 presets, they said maybe it's too much. Yeah, and so it's basically like a multi-effect where you have your low pass filter and your high pass filter and reverbs and delay and bit crushers and stutter effects and note repeaters, and you basically have this grid that kind of runs like a sequencer, and then each block of that sequencer is one of your effects, and you can kind of like sequence to make it change all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's such a great way, especially when you're browsing through the preset and you're trying to find something different and think outside the box. I think this is a great tool, especially when you put it on something that you're not supposed to put it on. You know, if it's a breakbeat drum sample, yeah, of course, stutter and a little bit of bit crush and weird stuff would work on it. But then when I put it on the guitar part and search for the reverb preset, because it's constantly being modulated, it created something that I don't know if I would have reached that kind of reverb by trying to emulate it myself. I wouldn't even think of kind of thinking in that direction. And so I find that this is, and there are a lot of plugins similar in their mentality that can do that. You mentioned Vital Synth, which
yeah, that looked pretty cool. That looked like a simple, flexible digital synth that is very inexpensive.
Yeah, it's so inexpensive that it's actually free.
Nice.
Yeah, you can pay for it, and then you get some extra features, like they have a text-to-speech function.
Using the wavetable synth?
Exactly. But instead of dragging in a pre-recorded phrase, I guess they put into it, it's the one guy that makes it. And he basically put a text-to-speech engine built into the thing. So you write and you can choose the language. So you can try writing something in English and choosing a different language algorithm, and then it might say it weird, but it could be interesting. That sounds like
fun.
Yeah. And then it wouldn't necessarily say it like you can program it so it'll be like a talk box, but you can also just choose one region of the speech and make it go back and forth using, modulating it with your mod wheel or an LFO or an envelope. There's so many things that you can do with it. I find it looks similar to Serum, which is a really popular synth, yeah. and I use it too, but it has its own magic, and I really like using it to sound design my own risers. I have a weird fascination with risers. I think they're pretty much the best tool. If you need to create tension and build up in your track and it's not happening, first of all, work on the track so it'll happen. But if you're in a pinch and you're in a rush, throw a riser on there. It'll just make it happen for you. And yes, you can use samples, but I find that which is weird because with services like Splice and Noise that has unlimited samples from so many creative people that are making amazing sounds, I still find that creating your own sound effects, if it's a drop or a riser, it can fit your track that much better. I think that it's something that sometimes can be overlooked. So,
what can give us a description? What is a riser and what is a drop? For the rock stars who don't know what that means yet.
A riser is simply a sound that has usually a rising tone to it. So it can be as simple as a sine wave that has the pitch rising throughout a predetermined time.
Right. Like if you were talking and I was just going in the background, it's like building some tension, right?
Exactly.
And then we get to the break and I go, and then all of a sudden there's a breath.
Yes. And then a riser can also have dynamic characteristics. So a drummer would sometimes use it when he's doing like a cymbal wash, where he would go, that, I mean, to me, that it's more of a transition, but it also acts as a riser because it intensifies something, right?
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool, I think, to, if you're doing rock music or if you're doing productions that typically have guitars, bass, and drums and real instruments, it's really, and you've got room to think outside the box. It's really fun to explore how the electronic side of production, how you can borrow from the vocabulary of it, like using things that build up going into a chorus, using synthy sounds that just kind of do like a little ethereal, Tinkerbell thing right there in the break or whatever it is that you need,
Exactly. I can't remember the name of the band. They had, it's okay. I think I found them. It's really old. Okay. Cause I'm a millennial. So all the Gen Zs out there, please forgive me. But, there was a band, when I was a teenager, called Boys Like Girls. And they used a lot of, digital sounds along with, it was a rock band, right? But they use a lot of digital stuff and a lot of kind of glitchy processing on their vocals. And they used risers and drops and stuff like that in a just a tremendous way. And I mean, now with genres like trap kind of, finding its way in pretty much everything. And every genre. So we get more and more of those, but this was kind of like one of the first times that I've heard it.
You mean like the mixing of genres between a rock band and some other kind of trending production style?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that goes back to Limp Bizkit. It's
my God, yes.
The heavy bands, and now like we're mixing in the DJ, and stuff like that, and and it goes back earlier than that. Of course, you got Walk This Way with Run DMC and Aerosmith, and Rick Rubin. But it's fun to be reminded that these different styles, like we can always mix and match stuff.
Yeah, Linkin Park did it brilliantly.
Yes.
So I mean, there are definitely other synths that can do it, but it's funny because these days most things cover the basics, but each synth plugin, or even if you have an analog synth, has its own kind of character, and then it's always fun to find what is fun for you to do with it.
Yeah. Do you spend much time just sort of composing patches for synths and instruments, or do you find that that's less fruitful and it's more useful for you to just find collections of favorites and then have those at your fingertips when you go to compose?
This is a complicated question because when I was just starting out, I had kind of like a mentor, and I was just, starting to get a lot of plugins, and I played my mentor this track that I did, and he's like, okay, so you took a bunch of presets and you put them together, but what's your sound in it? And so ever since this kind of hit hard, because like it was the first thing that I ever let someone hear, and then it's like, yeah, this is great, but it has no identity in a way. Like it's just a bunch of presets.
Right.
And so I try to kind of do as much as I can with my own things, but then sometimes you also know exactly what you want. If your song hits that place where you just need an 808, you could design it, but you can also just use an 808 preset. Or even if it's not just something as simple as an 808 bass or an 808 kick, sometimes you just know that, because music has been, or rather, digital music production has been here for a while. And so sometimes using a preset can say a lot. Say early 2000s, using an orchestral hit was just like the what you would do with a pop song.
Yeah.
But these days, when you do it, it's a throwback.
Like Owner of a Lonely Heart.
Exactly. And so kind of the roles kind of shift. So sometimes you using a preset can be something that brings out your own identity and your own voice.
Especially if you're the first one to use the preset. So often I feel like I'd see that, you I think it's the story, it's the Hendrix story, but like, it bringing the wah to the foreground, the wah pedal, because it was a new thing, a new trick, a new tool for the studio or for guitar.
Yeah. In recent kind of film score news, Junkie XL, which is a brilliant composer, scored Deadpool. And so he used the sound that starts Michael Jackson's Beat It. I'm pretty sure that's the one, and I'm not embarrassing myself.
Okay.
That's I hope I get all the terms right.
That's my job. I'm here to be more embarrassing than my guest. So
fantastic. I think if I'm not completely mistaken, this sound came from a synth called the Fairlight. It is ridiculously expensive right now.
Yep.
And so just because it became so famous with that song, nobody used it because it became the Beat It sound and not just a sound. And so, and Junkie XL has a video about it. He actually goes into depth, and also a Cubase user on a PC, by the way. And so he kind of breaks down his composition of this track, but he knew that he wanted to use this specific sound, and then he used it on the Deadpool soundtrack, which is just perfect. I mean, like 100 out of 100. Just brilliant. And now nobody else can use it anymore. That's it. That's it.
Well, I mean, it's like, what about all the synths that they were using for Stranger Things? I mean, I hope those aren't all out, because those were pretty cool sounds.
No. I think there is definitely a definition where you associate a sound with a certain song or an artist, and just, using a type of sound. It's like, you can still use gated reverbs and be original. It's not like, oh, it's just for this specific song.
Yeah, totally. OWC now brings you the Mini Stack STX, the world's first Thunderbolt 4 certified storage and hub expander, perfectly sized to stack with the Mac Mini and the ideal storage and connectivity companion for Thunderbolt or USB-equipped computers and devices. With a universal SATA HDD SSD bay and NVMe M.2 PCIe SSD slot, you can expand your Mini's storage capacity to gigantic proportions. 3 Thunderbolt USB-C ports enable you to connect to millions of Thunderbolt, USB, and future USB 4 drives, displays, AV mixers, cameras, and tablets, as well as desktop accessories like a keyboard, card reader, or mouse. I'm using the Mini Stack STX paired with my Mac Mini M1 to house my dedicated audio SSD and sample libraries, and it works great in my studio. Find the new Mini Stack STX and all your storage needs at macsales.com/rockstars. Have you ever wished you could remove the click track bleed from a singer's vocal mic, the sound of shuffling feet from a full choir, or clicking noises from the valves of an otherwise brilliant trumpet solo? These are just some of the incredible things I have been able to clean up, edit, or remove from a recording using the magic of iZotope RX. Great for mixing with a collection of plugins for your DAW to manage plosives, clicks, S's, noise, buzz, reverb, breaths, and even guitar fret squeaks, with a set it and forget it simplicity that lets you focus on your creativity in this studio while you let iZotope handle the audio challenges. You can even adjust your vocal, bass, and drum levels inside of a finished stereo mix using the wizardry of rebalance. RX is truly magical. Try out the subscription option with an extended 30-day free trial at iZotope.com/rockstars or use the coupon code ROCK10 to get 10% off any individual plugin purchase. All right, so let's see. Let's pivot back for a sec and talk a little bit about some of the other controllers in your studio. You have an Avid S1. You've got this cool thing called the Monogram CC. Maybe start with those two. What the hell are they? Why do we care about those? And where have you found them to be useful in your studio?
Okay, so the Avid S1 is a motorized fader controller. So it's more than that, but in a nutshell. And so if you want to have a tactile control over your DAW, Cubase, Pro Tools, pretty much any DAW out there, I find that this is a great controller. There are other great controllers that can do it, like the SSL UF8. I think there's a company called Icon that makes also a variety of controllers that basically lets you touch the faders kind of like how you would open up the mixer in your DAW and you would use the mouse to do it. This is giving you that tactile feedback that you can actually, it's kind of pretentious to say, but touch your music.
Yeah. I love it. I love being able to grab faders and quickly make bold, different changes to set levels between the tracks that are mute, solo, all that stuff.
Yes. I find it to be, again, with my philosophy that I don't need to think about it. If I need to open up the mixer and take my mouse cursor to so I have a 3 monitor screen setup. The top one, I have 2 side by side at the bottom, and then 1 in the middle in the front for viewing my video. And so if I need to grab my mouse all the way from the left screen to my right screen where my mixer is, my virtual mixer in Cubase, that is time wasted. Again, I want to do it as quickly as possible. And what I find great about the Avid S1 is that it has the U-Control protocol in it that if you select a track, it'll show you exactly where the track is. If it's outside the Avid S1 has 8 faders, and if you're selecting a track that is outside those 8 faders region, it'll bank to whatever bank that you need to be. So the faders is there, and then you have the little light that tells you, okay, this is the track that you're on, and you can see with the little screen, you can see the name of the track, and you don't have to think about it. You just grab the fader, and if it's too loud, you bring it down.
Yeah.
And then when you go, when you can write automation very precisely, very easily. And then it has amazing stuff like you have, gosh, I forgot what they're called, where you can have kind of presets where if you want, say, the lead vocal to be on the rightmost fader all the time, no matter which track you're selecting, you can do that. And that's a great time saver. And
yeah, I forgot which one that is, but you can kind of lock a certain fader to
layouts.
One side.
Layouts.
Yeah, layouts. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the Avid S1. It's probably the controller that I use the most because it's volume. It's the first thing that you do to get a great balance for your mix when you're working on a song and you bring in a new instrument and maybe it's too loud or maybe it's too soft. You always, the first thing that you do most of the time is control the volume. So the S1 is definitely the one that I gravitate the most, and it's the center of the desk.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I love just having the mute ability too, because you can quickly not hear certain parts of the music. And for my brain, that opens up my understanding of what's going on in that moment. Sometimes I'm not ready to address a certain instrument and I just need to get it out of my view, sonic view.
Exactly. And then a tool that could be kind of overlooked sometimes with mixing or producing is panning, which is something that I don't do a lot. But the fact that you have the knobs to pan left and right there, kind of just keeps it a little more, at the top of your head, kind of like, okay, maybe I'll reach out and pan something and give it a little more character rather than like everything is in stereo all the time,
Right, totally.
Then,
so you find that one works great because, it works, obviously it can work great with Pro Tools, but it works with all these other DAWs as well.
Yes. It's not completely perfect. For me, I find that with Cubase, sometimes it loses connection and then I need to reset it, but it could be just on my end. And again, I'm using Cubase. If you're using Pro Tools, this is probably the best thing that you can do. It's a great step up over the artist mix. The faders feel better. I don't know if you had the artist mix before you had the S1.
I did not. No. This is actually my first time I've got a controller for Pro Tools and I'm really diving in. So I've got two of the S1s now and I got the SSL UC1 for controlling the SSL channel strip plugin.
That's great. Yeah, these are great. And so what I really like about it, the faders are probably the best in their fields. Some cheaper motorized controllers, their motors can get a little loud and sometimes even kind of get in the way of you trying to listen to your mix. If you have a lot of automations going, and I really like doing a lot of automations. So the motors on the S1 are extremely quiet, and then also the Yukon software that communicates with it is unparalleled because except for maybe a few controllers that communicate directly with Studio One, most other controllers are using Mackie HUI protocol, which is really old and being very much outdated. And I'm kind of waiting for a new protocol. I think MIDI 2.0 should fix that.
Is that something that's coming around the corner?
I hope so. They started talking about it, I think, in 2019, but MIDI
2.0, that's hilarious. I mean, no, we only had to wait since the 1970s.
Yeah, but then I don't know if anybody would be able to resonate with this a lot, but if you're using Contact, which is a sampler by Native Instruments, probably the most famous one, most sample libraries are built to work in contact. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for each contact instance, you can only have 16, and then you need to open up another one. And that's a limitation of MIDI. You can only have 16 channels. It's 2022.
So 16, when you say 16, you mean 16 different instruments in that contact player?
Exactly. And then if you want to add another one, you need to open up another contact player, and then you have another 16. Right. There is absolutely no reason other than the limitation of MIDI 1.0.
Yes.
And so
binary code, Rockstars, binary code.
Exactly. And so I think the thing that I know that we're again venturing into the geeky stuff, but I read a little bit of what MIDI 2.0 should give. Not even the musician or the producer, but the manufacturers of keyboard, MIDI keyboard and controllers are brilliant stuff. So not too far in the future, you'll be able to hook up a MIDI keyboard, and because it supports MIDI 2.0, you won't need any driver. The computer will know what the keyboard is and everything that it can do, and the keyboard will know what is the computer you're hooked up, and it will be all set up automatically.
So ideally, it'll be wonderful if you can just go to a knob or a switch on a plugin, or a plugin for mixing, even, or like an instrument, and you just right click on it, and it just shows you like a little picture of this knob on the keyboard.
Exactly. And also labeled and say this is the filter cutoff, or this is the pitch. And so, that's touching a little bit. So right now with the U-Control protocol that Avid has with all of their controllers, it's unparalleled to any other controller that is using the old Mackie kind of system.
Right. Well, let's talk about the monogram CC thing that you're using as well, because that's kind of cool. And that does take us back to MIDI 1.0, which has worked for us for the last 50 years.
It still works, and honestly, smart people that code all of these kind of software that interact with all of these MIDI controllers, they get around it, and they do brilliant stuff, and getting more resolution out of their controllers using clever things that I honestly don't know how they're doing. But so the monogram CC is basically a modular system where you have kind of the main module that is just the communicator between the system and your computer. There's a software on your computer that lets you customize what each module actually does. And then it's really cool because it's magnetic. So if you want to add faders, there's a fader module, and it kind of magnetizes to the main brain, and then it lights up, and the software recognizes that you added it. And then you can do whatever you want with the faders. It has built-in controls if you're using Photoshop, if you're using any other video editing. It has kind of dedicated settings for those, or you can have it control any MIDI CC data, so you can kind of customize it. And it has modules for rotary knobs, and then also buttons that you can program to do whatever you want. They can trigger MIDI notes, or they can trigger, again, MIDI CC faders, so you can have them maybe change presets, or even do solo and mutes. It's all depending on how you configure it. But the great thing about it is its modularity and the way that it connects through magnets. And so it's not kind of like, okay, now I bought this big square with knobs and faders and I need to fit it on my desk. It's, you just need to connect it, and then you decide how you want it to kind of be.
Do you want to record killer drums in your home studio? Rockstars of Drums will show you how to record, edit, and mix pro-sounding drums with examples from a Nashville session drummer in a Grammy-winning studio. Do you want to know how to master your own music at home? Rockstars of Mastering will show you how with plugins in your DAW so that your music will sound awesome when you finish your mixes. And if you're looking for a step-by-step solution for a pro-sounding mix that won't take years to learn, the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass with Craig Alvin will show you a proven method for creating Grammy-winning quality mixes that you can apply in your home studio right now. Or if you just need to learn the fundamentals of creating a great sounding mix, then register for my free course Mix Master Bundle to get great mixes using simple free plugins. And get started now making your best record ever at recordingstudiorockstars.com/academy. Use the code ROCKSTAR at checkout to get 10% off any course for a limited time. All right, so let's jump into our closing jam session questions. They've got a series of these, and I just kind of ask them, and you can kind of give us your, quick responses and thoughts on things, or if you want to dig into it, we can.
100%.
All right, cool. So when you started out in recording, creating music, recording your studio, what do you feel like was holding you back?
Perfectionism, for sure. Just trying to get things as perfect as possible. And so I have a little sign in my studio that says fun is better than perfect, which is my take on done is better than perfect. If you have fun while creating, you don't have to worry about it being perfect. It's going to be perfect. You just have to be fun.
Yeah, I think that's a good reminder for us. I mean, why else would we do this?
Exactly. Or anything.
We'll go go into banking or something. I don't know.
Exactly.
What was some of the best advice you received?
Performance comes first. I think it doesn't matter if you don't have the best gear or you don't have the best, the best abilities, as long as kind of whatever you're recording, the performance is good, the rest is going to be good.
And I don't remember whether you actually covered this, but did you start out by going to school to learn composition and theory and performance and all that?
No, I kind of figured it out myself. I learned piano for 10 years and then just kind of brought everything that I learned listening to music and everything that I learned with the piano to the computer and figured stuff myself. But whenever I'm struggling producing something, I always make sure that that the performance of whatever I'm kind of bringing into my mix is good.
Okay, awesome. So how about sharing with the Rockstars a recording tip, hack, or secret sauce, something they can use on their very next session? I know you've already shared a bunch, but give us another one.
So it always kind of changes. There's always this secret sauce that I use and then I forget about and move to the other one. The current one that I really, really like, and this is something that I totally stole from Ian Kirkpatrick in one of his streams, which is brilliant. I use Soothe or Spiff, which is a great plugin by OX Sound. I think that's how you pronounce the company's name. Which does really sophisticated stuff with resonance point in your source. So it figures out what's a resonant point that might be a little harsh, and it can accentuate it or maybe bring it down. But they have a little option that's called Delta that you can listen to what it's affecting, and then you're getting just the resonance points. And I used to use it just to check if I'm hitting the right things that I was trying to hit, but he left it on and kind of used it as a, just this is the sound now, and started processing that. And that yielded the most creative results. I find it most effective on percussions, but I mean, you can get creative and use it on anything. It's just great.
So that's kind of like running your guitar through the wah pedal, but you don't move it around anymore. You just pick one cool spot and frequency and just start working with your guitar sound from there.
Yes, but think about like running it through 10 wah pedals that are changing depending on what's going on with your source.
Oh, okay, cool. I get it. That's cool. So it's got a little bit of artificial intelligence in there.
Oh yeah, a lot of it. And then the mentality of the trick is, think about if you have an EQ that you can kind of solo just the band that you're working on, kind of like you can do with an SSL, and leaving that audition sound on, and you're getting just the band, but for all of the resonance points. It's just sonically so interesting, and you can transform whatever you're working on from just maybe sometimes a generic boring sound to just like the main instrument in your production.
Okay, cool. How about sharing a favorite hardware tool, something physical you really enjoy having around for sessions and creating?
I would have to say the Stream Deck. It's so versatile. It's so fun to use. You have one.
I'm pushing the button to mute my mic with this very answer.
Yeah, the Stream Deck. It has to be it.
Okay, cool. There, I just pushed the button again. How about sharing a resource for the business side of doing this? If we want to make music for more than just a hobby, have you got a tip or a resource or some helpful tool we could be using or advice?
I have a couple. I think I mostly use just Excel or Google Sheets to keep track of kind of what is lining up, which are my clients, how much I've worked with them in the past, what I can, like, bouncing off ideas on how I can enrich our kind of relationship and maybe, get more projects, track, who paid me, who didn't, what in the process. I think this is, especially with Google Sheets, it's just free, it's there, and you can use it. I think that's mostly what I use. But for kind of organization stuff, where kind of like tracking what I actually need to do, I use an app. It's Mac only, I think. Mac and iPad. It's called Things 3, and it's my to-do list, and it's just fantastic. You can do so much with it. You can have categories and subcategories, and then you have your to-dos, and in these to-dos you can have sub to-dos that you can, so say you have a mix, then this is your main to-do, and then you can write notes and like, I need to, if you have ideas, then boost the guitar and send the client what, like, there's so much you can do. And then I just remember to put everything that I need to do in Things 3, and then every morning it's kind of like my own assistant telling me what I need to do. I don't need to like, I told this client that I'll send him this. It's all kind of like there for me.
Cool. And then have you ever tried anything like Samply.app or Samply Audio, where you can upload files and send a link over to your client, and then they can actually comment directly on the audio timestamp?
No, I have seen them, but my line of work doesn't really require that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. How about wait, did I just ask you the organizational one? No, not yet. That's next.
but I already sort of answered that.
Yeah, you did.
Sorry about that.
No, that's quite all right. So then let's go to our closing one. And thank you so much for being on the show with us. It's for, giving up this much of your time. In fact, it probably took you like a year worth of some particularly ninja macro just to accumulate all the seconds to make up 2 hours to join us on this podcast once a year. So we appreciate it, man.
I can do another 2 if you want. This is such a topic that I love. Thank you for having me. This is blast.
So this is the closing question. It's hypothetical, and we're going to take the Wayback Studio machine, and you get to go back in time. Maybe you've got a Ninjago outfit on or something like that. And you go back in the cartoon world, and you find young Brian, and you say, dude, I've come back in time to give you this single bit of information. Here's the most important thing you need to know to become a rock star of the recording studio yourself. What advice would you like to go back and give yourself if you could?
Um, wow, that's a deep question. Um, I think build very deep relationships with other creatives, either um, people that can actually generate clients or just inspire you, but invest in people.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
You're doing it right now, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us. Let the Rockstars know, where can they go find out everything you want them to know about you. If they're ready to compose their next masterpiece and they need your help, if they're ready to dial in their perfect macro and they need to learn more, if they just need to go listen to some brilliant music for inspiration, where would you like them to go or reach out to you?
YouTube is a great place to start. Just search for Brian Rivlin, and you'll find my YouTube channel. You can also visit my website. There's a contact form, and it goes directly to my email. It's brvln.com, obviously www.brvln.com. I don't share a lot of updates there, but definitely, if you want to reach directly, you can definitely use the contact form. Or also Instagram, brian.rivlin. Is another great place. I like to kind of diverse what I share and where I share it. So long form stuff I do on YouTube, but then in my stories on Instagram, I'll share little tips and quick stuff and maybe some ideas that I had. So yeah, feel free to follow or ask questions. I love hearing your takes. People ask me about, how do I do this and this macro, or how can I achieve this and that gives me ideas to do my own. So please reach out. I'll love nothing more.
Awesome, dude. Well, thank you so much for hanging with us. It's been a pleasure. I can't wait to connect in person. You know, I don't know, when I come up to Canada for something, or if you come down here for something.
Absolutely.
And Rockstars, thank you for listening. And Brian, I look forward to seeing you around the studio, man.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
All right, man. Talk soon.
Okay. Yep.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. And if you want more free content from Recording Studio Rockstars, all you have to do is go to rsrockstars.com/email. Again, that's rsrockstars.com/email to enter your name and email, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, podcast updates, and even free gear giveaways for your studio. Just look for the link in the show notes below. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our amazing sponsors who help make this episode possible: API, OWC, Spectra 1964, Samply, Atom Audio, and Isotope. Remember to use these coupon codes for special discounts. At isotope.com/rockstars, use the coupon code ROCK10 for 10% off any plugin purchase, or start your extended 30-day free trial subscription for access to many plugins. At samply.app, sign up for a free account with unlimited projects and use the coupon code RSR20 to get 20% off the first 3 months when you're ready to upgrade to a pro account. At recordingstudiorockstars.com/academy, use the coupon ROCKSTAR for 10% off any course for a limited time. You will find links to all these awesome sponsors in our show notes. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio. They're going to help you make your best record ever. I would also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars, Vlad Weselchenko, Braden Stremming, and John Richardson, for additional podcast and video production. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.